heated exchanges outside City Hall between protesters arguing for and against solitary confinement.
Inside City Hall, New York City Corrections Commissioner Louis Molina was defending the need for punitive segregation. Take a listen.
This bill, if enacted, would make our facilities far less safe for every person that enters to do their jobs. It would endanger every person in our custody, and I urge you not to endorse it.
So one of the co-sponsors of the bill banning solitary confinement is Public Advocate Jumaane Williams. He is joining us this morning to explain what is next. So good morning to you, Public Advocate. Thank you for being here.
Good morning. Thanks so much for having me again.
So, you know, this bill, we've really been talking about this for quite some time, limiting the amount of time that detainees can be held. What are the specifics behind it?
No, this is important as we crossing over the 16th death in Rikers, more than even last year, this year. What people need to understand is that we're trying to ban torture, which is defined by the UN, and is commonly called solitary. What people are hearing are different names: punitive segregation, restrictive housing, solitary, and it sometimes can be very confusing. And so to make it plain, all we're saying is you cannot isolate people at, for instance, 23, 24, 20 hours a day for a prolonged time period. We are saying that you can and should be able to separate people for the sake of safety for everyone. All we're simply saying is we have to separate, de-escalate, and then investigate. And so there's a lot of agreement in places, and for some reason, many folks are not even allow us to agree where we actually agree.
So when you visited Rikers, did you speak to any of the inmates that were put in solitary confinement, and what kind of conditions they actually described?
So when we were there last September, it was on the brink of just a jail that wasn't operational. And there were a lot of people in terrible conditions that were being held for 24 hours a day in shower cages or cells, both of which are identified as solitary confinement. When we went back in August, I have to say, for lack of a better word, things were better. But there are still people being kept in 24 hours a day in different locations that the commissioner may or may not know about.
Right.
Is actually still happening. One of them is commonly called a cell within a cell, which means you're in a smaller cell and then you get into a slightly larger cell and they count that out of cell time. But we do want to make it clear that we are saying that you have to be able to separate people at points in time. The real debate here is about for how long and when we have due process. But some people are making it believe that the argument is something else.
Yeah, let me play this first and then ask you a question. Correction Officer Union President Benny Bastio, he says solitary confinement is necessary to keep officers safe. Here he is.
What do we do with the inmates that continue to cut, stab, slash, sexually assault, and brutally assault our officers and other inmates? Nobody's able to answer that question.
So let me meet you where you're at with what you're saying right now, right? You're saying you do have to separate, but the question is for how long. When you say separate, are you saying put them in a cell by themselves?
So what is interesting is if you ask people on the record, should we have solitary confinement, everyone would say no, that we don't have solitary confinement. And on the record, they even say we don't have punitive segregation. And this is where the confusion comes into play. Most of our bill are actually things that the commissioner and corrections are saying that we either do already or we are planning and trying to do. And so that point that's being pushed about needing to separate, we are saying yes, you have to be able to immediately isolate some folks for a couple of hours. By themselves, for a couple of hours with many check-ins to make sure that no harm is coming to them. You can then put them in a separate housing accommodations that is not general population, like they're doing right now, actually. But we want to make sure there's a certain amount of out-of-cell time because that's where actually the torture comes in. And they're doing some of this right now, which is why it's so hard to hear the pushback on places where we're actually agreeing, except we're saying we have to have some more due process so that you just can't hold people in these situations for as long as it's happening now.
So just for clarification, are you saying that Commissioner Molina doesn't know that this is happening, or do you think he's just denying it, or he's completely?
Well, I believe he's aware of the cell in the cell situation. And I was actually very surprised to hear him now say that he agrees with that. That's a place where there's going to be a stark disagreement. I'm not sure how much he is aware, which is disappointing, that there are people being held in other situations, albeit at a much lower number than I saw in September, which is great. But there are people being held in situations that we saw when we went in August for more than 24 hours. And that's a problem. And we have to acknowledge that it is a problem and say that this is the type of thing that we have to ban. Now let's work on how that separation works, so that we're actually changing behavior and lowering the violence.
Mayor Adams, as you know, he supports punitive segregation, solitary, call it, what you want, but 36 members of the city council support the bill, which means it will likely pass, right, even without the mayor's support. When can we expect that to happen?
Well, I'm thankful for the co-prime sponsor, Chair Colleen Rivera, Speaker Adrian Adams for their support, and the other 34 members that you mentioned. But I want to be clear, even with what you're saying with the mayor, the play on words is where the confusion is coming in. So when you hear people say they support punitive seg or they support restrictive housing, or sometimes maybe even solitary, then you ask them what that means. They're actually agreeing with us more likely than not. And that's why this pushback is a frustrating one.
So what do you think the mayor supports?
How to make things. Say it again?
What do you think the mayor supports?
I think if you ask the mayor, he will say that I don't support locking up people 20 to 24 hours a day, and I support separating people and having out of cell time for a certain amount of hours. That's exactly what we're saying, and that we should have due process. Why people are hanging on to words that are causing confusion when people are being harmed in Rikers and we have to move forward, you have to ask them.
Yeah, Jumaane, before we let you go, we're running out of time. We do want to quickly ask you about the tent cities that are being built in the Bronx for the migrants that have come here from the South. Just wondering what your feel is on what those conditions are like.
Well, obviously we're in a crisis situation. I would say there's cause for concern, and I think people are right to be concerned. We can't get rid of right to shelter, we know that. We also don't have very many options. And so we are trying to get information about what exactly is going to happen in those tents and how long people will be in it. Because we do have to acknowledge that this is a crisis situation. We got here, though, because people didn't listen to many of us in the first place in getting the type of housing and shelter system that we needed.
All right, Public Advocate Jumaane Williams, appreciate you being here on both those topics, and we'll talk to you soon, okay?
Thank you. Always a pleasure.